The call came late. My girlfriend's voice was tense. "A man is in our bedroom," she whispered. She didn't know I was watching the security feed. I told her to stay in the bathroom while I called the police. On my laptop, the bedroom camera showed nothing at that moment, but when I rewound the footage 2 hours earlier, there he was. He walked in as he belonged. Cap low, hoodie with my initials on the sleeve. He took his shoes off beside the bed, opened drawers, and set a hotel receipt on the nightstand. He wasn't hiding. He was comfortable. I had the cameras for safety, not because I wanted to watch her. Still, seeing him in my place hit a chord. He scrolled through his phone, then sat on the bed, looking around like he owned the space. The timestamp read 2 hours before the call. I called the police and explained I had live access to the feed. An officer was dispatched. While we waited, I kept checking the footage. Earlier clips showed her letting him in that evening, buzzing the door, greeting him, pouring coffee in the kitchen. They sat close, heads bent together. Small moments stacked into a clear pattern. When she spoke on the phone again, I heard fear mixed with a strange calm. "Tell them to hurry," she said. "He says he'll leave if the cops come." I could hear her trying to manage the scene, to keep things quiet for whoever was inside. The voice unsettled me more than the footage did. I thought about the routine of a relationship, texts at noon. The footage showed him wearing my hoodie. Seeing that made this feel personal, like a deliberate trespass. He handled drawers like a man familiar with the place, and at one point slid a small box into his jacket. It was quiet behavior, precise and selfish. When the officer arrived, I showed him the paused frames. He made notes and went to check the address. I stayed on the line with her, keeping the police updated. I felt a clarity come over me. Betrayal narrows your choices, preserve proof. I closed the laptop for a moment and centered myself. This wasn't a scene for drama. I didn't want spectacle. I wanted a clean, undeniable record. Having proof meant I could control the narrative, not be at the mercy of excuses. The officer returned and reported no one was harmed. He took statements and said he'd file a report. I asked for a little time to decide what to do next. I began to plan quietly. Secure the locks, gather the evidence, make arrangements to separate our lives without chaos. Small things, but necessary. Sitting there with the still image of him on the bed and the receipt beside him, my feelings were oddly steady. Disappointment, yes, but mainly a practical focus on putting things right. I started to move through the steps I'd listed, careful and methodical. I would not let impulse write this ending. I would use what I had, video, timestamps, receipts, to make the truth plain and irreversible. After the officer left, the apartment felt different. Quiet, but not peaceful. I sat on the couch with the living room lights off and watched the hallway camera again. I wanted to understand how long this had been happening, not for drama. When trust breaks, the mind searches for details that were missed. I didn't want to guess. I wanted the truth in front of me. The recordings from earlier that week showed short visits. He never stayed long. 15 minutes one night, 20 on another. She walked him out each time, checking the hallway before opening the door. Their body language said everything. Not romantic in the open, but familiar enough to show this wasn't new. I paused the video, leaned back, and felt something settle inside me. It wasn't anger. It was a calm decision. I was done with excuses before they even arrived. When someone chooses to bring another person into your home, your bed, your routine, they tell you exactly what you are worth to them. I didn't need her to explain anything. The recordings already spoke louder than anything she could say. Before she returned from her fake emergency, I prepared the apartment. I didn't rush. I wanted everything neat. I gathered her clothes, shoes, and personal things. I placed them gently into bags. No damage, no drama. I didn't want to give her the chance to say I was acting out of rage. I wanted everything to look controlled. A quiet ending carries more weight than yelling. Next, I laid the hotel receipts across the bed. They weren't hidden in drawers. They were in plain view, like evidence in a case file. Each one matched dates when she told me she was out with coworkers or running errands. Seeing them lined up made the pattern impossible to deny. The locksmith arrived sooner than expected. He worked quickly. Fresh locks on the front door, balcony, and even the storage room. I paid him extra to make sure everything had a clean finish. When he left, I turned the new keys in my hand. They felt solid, like a boundary finally in place. I kept one more project for myself. I exported all the camera clips from the past week and organized them into a single folder. Each file had a timestamp label, so nothing could be dismissed as a misunderstanding. I placed a printed list of those timestamps next to the receipts on the bed. By the time I finished, the apartment looked almost staged. Clean counters, folded bags at the door, and a quiet stillness that made the air feel different. Not empty, just free of confusion. When she finally pulled into the parking lot, I watched from the window. She ran toward the building, probably expecting to walk into chaos. Instead, she found a locked door. She knocked softly at first, then harder. I opened it just enough to stand in the doorway, and she stepped back like she didn't understand what she was seeing. She tried to talk fast, like speed would cover the truth. She said she panicked. She said she didn't know what to do. She tried to suggest that maybe I misunderstood what I saw. I didn't argue. I didn't ask anything. I simply stepped aside so she could look down the hallway. Her bags waited by the wall. When she saw them, her face changed. Not sad, caught. I walked past her and pointed toward the bedroom. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The receipts, the printed timestamps, and the folder on the bed were enough. She didn't step inside. She stood in the doorway like someone realizing her story was already over. I told her the truth. This is not a fight. This is the end. She stood in the hallway for a long moment, holding the strap of one of her bags like she didn't know what to do with her hands. The quiet in the apartment made every small sound feel louder. The soft hum of the refrigerator, the faint rustle of plastic as she shifted her weight. She asked if we could talk somewhere private. I told her the living room was fine. There was no reason to leave the space where everything had already been revealed. She walked in slowly, almost like she expected me to stop her. Her eyes moved across the room and landed on the laptop still open on the table. The camera feed screensaver glowed in the dark, and she looked away as if the sight stung. She began with the predictable lines. She made a mistake. She was confused. She didn't plan for it to go this far. I let her speak without interrupting. Not because I believed a word of it, but because people reveal more when you give them silence instead of a debate. When her words thinned out, she glanced toward the bedroom. I could tell she already knew what was waiting inside. Still, she walked there slowly, maybe hoping she was wrong. When she pushed the door open, the scene met her like a wall. The receipts lined across the bed, the printed list of timestamps, the folder containing the exported clips. All of it was placed neatly. Organized truth is hard to dismiss. She didn't touch anything. She stood there quietly, then lowered her head. She knew every printed timestamp matched a moment when she lied. No dramatic reaction, no shouting, just a quiet acceptance that everything she tried to hide was now sitting in front of her in plain daylight. I walked to the doorway and stayed behind her. She turned toward me with a small breath and said something that surprised me. I didn't think you'd find out this way. I didn't respond. There was nothing to add. She tried once more to explain, saying she let him in because things between us felt distant. That was her word. Not broken, not painful, just distant. As if that made bringing someone else into our home reasonable. She said she only called me earlier because he wouldn't leave, and she got scared the neighbors might see him. That was the moment everything locked into place for me. The call wasn't about danger. It was damage control. She wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of being exposed. I stepped back from the doorway and gave her space to collect her bags. She moved slowly, wiping her face, trying to keep herself composed. She asked if we could figure things out later, but her voice didn't carry much hope. She already knew I was done. When she reached the front door, she paused and looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Maybe regret. Maybe frustration that she lost control of the story. I stayed quiet. I didn't want to give her one last argument to hold on to. She walked out with her bags, and the door closed behind her with a soft click. Just like that, the space felt different. I turned off the hallway camera feed and sat down on the edge of the bed where the receipts were still laid out. I didn't feel chaos or confusion. I felt steady. I gathered the evidence and slid it all into a box. I didn't know if I'd ever need it again, but it felt right to keep the record complete. When people show who they are, having the truth stored away gives you peace, not revenge. Still, I wasn't done. The night after she left, the apartment felt strangely orderly. Not empty, just quiet in a new way. I didn't touch the bed or the receipts again. I boxed them and slid the folder into a drawer. Part of me knew I wouldn't need to confront her with any of it again. The truth had already done the work for me. Still, I wasn't ready to leave things open-ended. When someone hides something in your home, it's not only betrayal, it's disrespect for your space, your time, and your trust. I wanted a clean break that couldn't be rewritten later. Early the next morning, I called the building management office. I explained that I needed her removed from the lease. I didn't give details. I didn't need to. They told me it could be done if I provided documents showing she moved out voluntarily. Her leaving the night before, with her belongings in hand, was enough. I signed the forms quietly, handing over the new key set. By noon, everything was official. She no longer had access to anything connected to the apartment. No complaint, just a quiet administrative ending to what she'd thrown away. Later that day, I checked the camera feeds again, this time out of habit, not suspicion. All empty. That reassurance allowed me to do something else I'd been planning. Disable the cameras inside the apartment. I kept the door and hallway ones for safety, but the bedroom and living room feeds were turned off. I wanted my home to feel like mine again, not a place where I had to verify someone's honesty through recordings. Around the evening, my phone buzzed with a message from her. Short, careful words. She asked if we could talk when things calmed down. She added a line saying she hoped I didn't hold anger toward her. The tone wasn't guilt, it was worry. Worry about the story, not the damage. I didn't reply. Instead, I focused on the last step I wanted to take. Not revenge in a loud way. Something small, clean, and factual, so the truth followed her without emotion attached. I sent a quiet email to her ex's wife. Yes, he had a wife. I found out about her the night before, when I checked the hotel receipts and looked up the name listed beside his. A few minutes online led me to a public profile with photos of him standing beside a woman who had no idea what he had been doing. Hello. I think you should be aware that your husband has been visiting my home with my partner over the past several weeks. I have camera recordings with timestamps and receipts that match the dates. This message isn't sent with hostility, only clarity. If you ever want copies of the files, I can provide them. I sent it and closed the laptop. There was no rush of satisfaction, just a slow, steady sense that the truth was finally landing where it needed to. 2 hours later, she messaged me again, shorter this time. She said she'd heard from someone and wanted to know if I shared anything private. Her concern wasn't about what she did. Her concern was about fallout. I still didn't respond. Instead, I made myself a simple dinner, opened the windows, and let the cool air drift through the apartment. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was living in my own space again, not a place where someone else's secrets were walking around behind closed doors. Before going to bed, I walked through the apartment slowly. A glance at the empty corners. The bedroom looked calm now. No hidden stories. I lay down, let the quiet settle, and knew I had one last part to tell. Not to her and him. The next morning, sunlight came through the blinds in a way I hadn't noticed in a long time. It felt like the apartment had been holding its breath for weeks and finally exhaled. I made coffee and sat at the table without checking the cameras, my phone, or anything connected to the night before. I just sat there, letting the quiet settle. Around noon, everything began unfolding on its own. First, her ex's wife sent me a calm message thanking me for being straightforward. She said she had suspected something, but didn't have proof. She didn't ask for dramatic details, only the files. I sent her a clean folder with the timestamps and the clearest clips. She didn't reply again, and she didn't need to. The truth was now where it belonged, and whatever happened next was between them. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed again, this time with a long message from my ex. She said things blew up on her side, and she wanted to know why I got other people involved. Her words were sharp, but underneath them was panic. Panic about consequences. I read it once, set the phone down, and didn't type anything. By evening, I got another message, shorter this time. She asked if we could meet in a public place to talk. I didn't owe her a final conversation to make her feel better about choices that were fully hers. What she didn't know was that the one thing she thought she controlled, the narrative, was now out of her hands. Not because I went around spreading things, but because her actions reached people she never expected. She brought someone else into my home. That man carried the truth back into hers. That is the part of karma people forget. It doesn't need anger to work. A week passed quietly. I focused on work, routine, and getting my apartment back to a place that felt steady. I boxed up the camera equipment I didn't need anymore and returned the spare furniture keys. I rearranged the bedroom slightly, not to erase anything, but to reclaim the space as mine again. Then, out of nowhere, I saw her in the parking lot one afternoon. She wasn't waiting for me. She was standing by a car, talking to someone on the phone. Her voice was low, and she sounded tired. When she noticed me, she froze for a moment, then quickly looked away. She didn't walk over. She didn't try to explain anything. She just got into her car and drove off. And the ending was simple. She lost her home. As for me, peace came slowly but cleanly. No dramatic confrontations. I told myself something that night as I stood on the balcony overlooking the street. You don't control how people treat you. And with that, the story closed for good.